Well, while we give it a few minutes, why don't you give me an update on how business is and maybe what your toughest marketing challenge is these days?
Sure. This year's been going really well. It's been kind of atypical in the sense that I've had two large projects that I am spearheading. So I'm not being subcontracted as a subject matter expert for another agency or anything, um, which I like doing, but this year I haven't been doing. But I've got two clients. I did project rate proposals. They both said go for it. So that kind of divided up the first half and going to be the second half of the year. And then all the kind of little small stuff that I usually do, like little maintenance requests, little feature ads, stuff like that. But as my usual, direct client relationships, those have been like radio silent all year until like a week or two ago, um, which is nice to see that change. So now I've got a couple small little things to juggle on my plate, which is nice because that just gives me a little bit of growth for this year. Um, so yeah, so it's doing good. I kind of have the pendulum between big projects and then a bunch of small projects and then one or two big projects. I like the bigger stuff. I like being able to focus and refine on things. But I definitely think the ongoing relationships and stuff is kind of where I see a lot of the growth if I can kind of keep those going. So it's just, yeah, finding those right clients. And I think a lot of the projects I look for either are big enough that they want to go with a big full-featured agency that has a team of developers, or they're too small for me to really want to spend my time on because it's just like oh, we need you to update the Divi theme on this WordPress site. And I'm like, I don't want to touch Divi ever again, kind of thing. So I'm kind of in the middle ground where there used to be a lot of smaller businesses, but now it seems they're kind of going to the bigger projects or the bigger agencies or just kind of smaller, bits and bobs here and there that I don't really have any junior developers to help me field some of those smaller requests.
And then, so what's your greatest marketing challenge, your toughest marketing challenge these days?
I get, I get most of my work through referrals, which I really like. The Drupal that I specialize in is a small enough community that people are saying, "Oh yeah, Andrew does Drupal," so they can get referrals through that. But it's kind of at that steady state where I'm not getting a steady stream of leads enough to bring on more people to grow my business. Um, they always land in my lap when I need them, but I'd like more of a menu to choose from instead of just, okay, here's the next thing.
So what marketing are you doing then?
Nothing.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
basically it's the cobbler's shoes. The cobbler has no shoes kind of thing where, yeah, I've been
sure.
busy with projects and I scheduled out the second project to kind of give me some flex time to work on my personal site, to really refine the messaging and put a good chunk of energy into that to kind of better, explain what I do and the clients I want. But that has been the can that's been kicked down the road for months and months.
So one of the things I'll recommend to you then is to kickstart marketing, especially as a solo business owner, solo creative business owner, is to check out Elise Bennon Marketing Mentor, and she has the simplest marketing plan. And it's really a really comprehensive like checklist of just how to get started, things to do a few minutes each day, how to figure out who you want to target. I think it's great for people like you and I in a advertising kind of space where can't wait for them to come to you and you can't rely on word of mouth. So I can send you that link here in a little bit. Today's marketing office hours, just so it's recorded, so you know. So if I put it on the marketing office hours page within the site, so people can look back and hear a conversation. So I'm just disclosing that in case there's any proprietary information you want to keep. Office hours function as in you get to ask me any kind of questions, and we can just have an open discussion about whatever you want to talk about in regards to marketing. And but I also started out with a factoid. So I'm going to do that, and then you can ask me some questions after. Does that sound good?
Yep, sounds good.
Good. And we usually get a couple people, so this is it's I like that they're intimate, so this is good. So one of the things I always hear from folks is my marketing working? And so that's the focus of today's hot topic of stepping back to look at how you currently monitor marketing performance. So Andrew, this doesn't apply to you because we're not doing any marketing, but should you start to do marketing, how are you going to track the success of it? How are you going to know what thing is working? How are you going to know what is unclear or missing if you're not looking at any results? So the best way to get started is to set some goals of what you want marketing to do. And in your case, lead gen, right? You want to generate some quality leads that can go into your pipeline. Well, so we have to figure out what things to track when you start initiating any marketing tactics. So marketing works when is the next part of it. So how do you know when marketing's working? And I'm just going to queue up all the bullets, while I talk through this. So many businesses ask me, is our marketing even working? And it's hard to dig down into figuring out what is working. So today it's all about what to look for because success isn't about leads or likes. It's about alignment, clarity, and consistency. And I think that's key for even you, Andrew, as we're both solopreneurs, right? Staying consistent and not reactionary doing marketing because all of a sudden things are drying up. I'm not saying you're doing that, but that is a behavior. It's the feast and famine cycle. So staying in alignment with what you're trying to achieve, being clear, and being consistent. So marketing that works isn't random. It connects to that bottom line. So ask yourself, did this campaign or initiative bring in qualified leads? Did it convert more of the right kinds of customers? And if there's no clear link to revenue, then it's time to rethink or realign. Because ultimately, marketing is to generate revenue. So, looking beyond vanity metrics, you can ask things like, are people clicking and taking steps? Let me just open this. Yeah. Are people clicking and taking next steps? Are they replying to emails? Are they booking calls? Are they downloading lead magnets? Engagement should have intention. So, whatever you're putting out, you have to make sure that you're going to get something back. And that's a measurement key. When When your marketing message is clear and consistent, then people will start repeating it back. So you'll hear phrases used in your discovery calls or in referral calls because then that's when you know messaging is sticking. So that all goes back to consistency. And so often I've run into business owners who are bored with the messaging and they're only in maybe year one of the messaging. And it's all about testing human behavior, testing your vertical and adjusting, but the point should still be clear. And that's what branding is, right? Is consistency across visual, tone, and experiences. So marketing isn't about doing more, it's about doing what works and then doing it again and tracking it, listening for it, and tying it to outcomes, which tying it to outcomes usually is the sticky point for most business owners. But here's the kicker. If you're not tracking any of this, you won't actually know if marketing's working. And these signals only show up when you're measuring the right things. Otherwise, it's just vibes and nothing, and it doesn't scale. So when your marketing message is clear and consistent, nope, I skipped a slide. So if you're not tracking, you're not going to know what thing is working. If you're engaging in LinkedIn and trying to make more connections, are your connections growing? Are those connections growing and generating phone calls? Are you going to networking events and collecting new contacts? Are you getting those discovery calls? Are you booking more appointments? Are you filling your database? You have to know when you measure, you're able to see what's working and what's not. So if by zero tracking, you won't know what's working, you won't be able to improve anything, and you won't be able to repeat what's working well, and you can't go off of what feels good, right? I've talked to some people that have said, owners that have said, "Oh, I have a great repeat business model. I have a large percentage of my clients come back." And I said, "Well, what's the data say about your repeat business?" And they had never really looked at their POS database. And when we did, we found out that less than 10% of their database was coming back for repeat. And what happened was owner just had this feeling that they were getting good repeat business because they saw faces on a repetitive volume or in a repetitive nature. But what there was no volume to it. So here where they perceived that repeat business was good, it really was lacking. And that turned into a whole marketing initiative to how to generate and increase that 10% repeat, how to grow that number. So that gave us a benchmark to hit, a goal, a target to focus on. And then we worked backwards to create a variety of different strategies in order to increase repeat business. So that's my little tidbit on how to tell if marketing's working. And it really comes down to setting clear goals and making all the initiatives focus around building and testing the right initiatives. So with that, Andrew, I'll give the floor to you and you can ask me any questions and we can have a conversation about marketing your business.
Sure. Yeah, I mean that's good. That definitely aligns with a lot of what I say from my kind of engineering mind is let's track things, let's try to get data to represent our decisions. Um, and I think that's pretty cool. And I think at least for me personally, it's like, okay, I've been to some networking events that's generated a couple contacts, but I definitely don't have a CRM set up other than my invoicing software that I use to kind of keep track of clients and projects. Um, and yeah, I think you mentioned LinkedIn. That's something where, I'd like to spend a little more time. But just at the very top, you mentioned it's not about just clicks and likes and things like that, because I see a lot of businesses just dump so much time and energy into social and blogging and videos, and just the return just isn't there. Um, so I definitely don't want to be kind of strategic in what I do. Um, I think for Abstract Penguin personally, first, I mean, in the back of my mind, the question always as a sole proprietor is, okay, should my LinkedIn page be Andrew Chernaskis or should it be Abstract Penguin? I definitely like working with contractors and mentoring some developers and growing the team a little bit, but I'm definitely have never been um, pitching as a big agency. A lot of times there will be, oh, we've got this internal team, but it needs some support. So we'll bring Andrew in as a fractional engineering manager or a fractional developer to, get us across the finish line or do this, side project for us because he's so much faster than, our internal corporate team or, um, I'm an extroverted engineer, so they can it's agencies that aren't afraid to put me in front of clients, when I need to talk to, speak to a Drupal or whatever subject matter I'm on. Um, so yeah, it's I'm trying to refine my messaging on my site this year to kind of communicate that, okay, I am an extroverted engineer. I am not just a code monkey. I want to understand your business goals and I want to communicate effectively with you and kind of be, a friendly um, development face to really, make technology serve you instead of you getting bogged down by, oh, we've got 10 different systems that we have to copy and paste in between. bring me to simplify that for you to save you time and energy. But yeah, trying to communicate that of yes, I mean, especially through the co-working space, I have a lot of full service agency services that I can provide where I can connect you with video professionals and content marketing people and things like that. But I like to focus on the engineering, but I'll offer these larger solutions if needed. Um, but also still kind of maintain that personal, you know, projection of myself and just kind of uh, can I communicate that, I am a extroverted engineer that's friendly and compassionate and methodical. I'm not doing a quick, you know, get it done WordPress site that's going to dissolve in a month. I'm building stuff to last and to grow. How can I communicate those core beliefs that I have and how I work in a way that doesn't sound like, well, every agency says we're unique and we're your best friend. And it's like, okay, in my mind, I've heard all of those kind of messages before, but talking to my colleagues, they say, Andrew, you really need to promote that kind of, uniqueness that you offer. And I just don't see a way of doing that in a way that doesn't sound super cliche or differentiated from other groups.
Can I help unpack a lot of there's I wrote so many notes. There's so many different
Go
angles we
for
could
it.
go. So one, you talked about LinkedIn personal versus your business. And I battle that too. And I've seen it both ways, right? So I guess the question for that seat is what are your business goals? Are you looking to stay as just Andrew with however your team is now? Or are you looking to grow and have a bigger team or like what does the company goal look like? What's the company vision look like?
Yeah, so I have two sides. Um, when I'm working on Abstract Penguin, I love the coding and interacting with clients and the architecture and that engineering side of things. I'm the Steve Wozniak side, but I don't have the Steve Jobs, let's do project proposals and marketing and business side of things. So part of me says I've got a good gig going now where I'm a contractor. Um, I'm helping out businesses. I'm not doing a lot of that larger grow into a big, agency. I like some of the other web agencies, in Erie that I know, but that's never kind of been my goal because I want to stay focused on the craftsmanship of the work. On the other hand, my biggest longing that I miss when I was a full-time employee was talking day to day with the designer and talking with the other engineers and saying, oh, yeah, I ran into that bug a while ago. Here's how to fix it. So I miss a lot of that teamwork conversation. And, I do feel like I'm a mercenary sometimes where I'm not part of the client teams. So I would like to do a little more of that teamwork and mentorship. And maybe that does mean growing more into an agency kind of model.
Well, that might come into my next question, so we'll pin that for a second. So let me ask you another growth question to see what answer we get. When you are um, prospecting, we'll call it in whatever way, are you hoping they hire Andrew and are they working primarily with Andrew or are they working with Abstract Penguin and a team or other people? Are you selling you or are you selling an ecosystem? I guess you could say. And this could be rhetorical, Andrew. You don't really have to answer these, and
Yeah.
I'm really just want to give you like thoughts to think about, okay? And because this definitely isn't a hot seat office hours. So just think
Yeah.
about that, and we'll move on to the next one. So when you talk about team and mentoring, if we were selling just Andrew versus a firm or an agency, then the next question is, who are your ideal decision makers? Who is the ideal client and the point person that you want to work with or love working with or want to attract more of?
A lot of times it'll be um I love when clients are see technology as an investment and not an expense. So a lot of times it'll be, hey, we've been doing this, process for ourselves, but now we want to grow it into a platform. Or we see the value in, you know, doing our point of sale system is linked to our marketing campaigns and it's linked to this and this, but we really want to integrate it. Instead of a lot of clients are like, hey, we have to have a website. Can we just put a brochure thing up there? Or, I like talking to like engineering managers and digital strategists and things like that, usually on these larger scale projects where they want to put the time and energy in. Um, Whereas then some of the clients are like, well, we have to have a website and we need you to build it. And we don't have any content or photography or business logic
So you're
or
looking at
marketing
function
message.
versus
So
form, right? I mean, we have form and
yeah,
function, right? And you have the brochure website or the actually do something website. So, and you're the do something website, right? That's the
yeah,
engineering side. So you
yeah. And
mentioned
it
the
doesn't have
phrase,
to be huge websites. I like working with small
sure.
businesses and stuff. But yeah, it's definitely a, you know, product, do something, you know, mindset.
So what is the typical job title of that person who is thinking that, hey, I want my website to do something more? And that's how they are triggered to know to go to a web engineer. Like I'm use quoting because I don't know the exact term, right? Who would be, what is the typical job title of that person who's like, I need a,
Um, a lot of times it'll be smaller teams where it's just they're wearing many hats, they're running a museum or something. So it could be, the CEO or the COO or just, but use those terms loosely because it's just smaller groups. They're like, hey, I'm running this, nonprofit and I need to do web stuff. So let's find Andrew to do it. Other times it's like a digital strategist or a VP of technology or engineering manager, that kind of technical side of the things where they've been given the directive where we need to simplify our processes or they've identified problems with their stack and they reach out to somebody like me.
that's fantastic. So if between, well, generalize, right? Just because I am going to keep seating you, of generalize as CEOs versus VPs of technology. Whom would you rather work with if you could choose?
The VPs of tech.
Okay, good. So now let's say your ideal target audience, your ideal target buyer is the VP of tech. When you start implementing LinkedIn or networking or out strategic outreach, those are the titles that you're going to go after. And start testing it. So this is where really I'm challenging you on niching. And oftentimes people get really afraid of niching, especially small folks, because it feels like you're saying no to the other people. But what it means is you're just trying to attract these people. You're not saying no or turning them away or not, because that's all word of mouth anyway. But where do you really want to put your efforts in when you start turning on marketing and you've just said the VP of technologies or even those seats of people? And so that's where you will niche. And your niche then means maybe it's not the whole website since you have a great referral base, but maybe there's a page within it that speaks their language and then that directly connects to them. And then that shows you're on the same level with them. You get it. And now that sets authority and it builds know, like, and trust. So niching, and it's okay to say no to the other ones because sometimes your no's become the bigger yeses, right? So niching, and that might even then help you align. Are they hiring you or are they hiring abstract, right? Penguin. And the VP of tech may want just the single guy to come in and do XYZ of this project. And then they want just Andrew. So I think you have a seat here where you can really, this is a little girly, but when you wave your magic wand of what do you really want, and if you haven't done any marketing and you're ready to turn on marketing, then turn on marketing for what you really want, right? Because then it feels good and it doesn't feel like an annoying task that you have to do. So there's that. So then I have wrote so many notes for you. You talked about other web companies. And so I would challenge you, and maybe you have, but to do a competitive analysis. But when I say a competitive analysis, I almost mean a scorecard. And having these, are they working with VPs of technology? These, what you perceive to be your competitors, and maybe they're not. So then are they really a competitor? If some of our local developing firms are working direct to consumer, then that's not your space. So then you have the opportunity to find the other Andrews and see how they are talking to those VPs of technology. And for you and I, what I love to always do is look at the big metro area, the big NFL cities of who are the other Andrews and how are they doing it? And who are you inspired by, or who are you like, no, I don't want to do that? Or, hey, I could do that, but I would do it like this, and really craft it your own because what you do isn't a unique thing. It is a very narrow thing, right? You have a very small net of you. And so, how can you do what you do and what they do, but do it better? And then you're easily able then to identify your differentials, right? Where you said your core values are empathy. You really have a ton of empathy. That's your extrovert side. It really means you really care about them and you really want to communicate with them and you really want to do this great job. Those could set you apart from the other Andrews of the VPs of technologies that are hiring. That might be just the brain behind the fingers of the engineering. Does that make sense? And
Yeah.
so then you're defining why you over the other Andrews when you're going after that niche market. The last thing I wrote down here is you can tweak any website and do all the things, but what's your customer journey? And your customer journey might shift when it's consumer, so the nonprofit who needs a better site, versus the VP of tech. They are going to want to see portfolio. I don't know, like I'm making up a scenario. But over here, what would they want to see first? What would be a way into your space? What could be a lead capture? Because you can't presume a click is going to lead to contract. You have to think about how do they prospect you or qualify you? Is it a free discovery call? Is it a before and after case? I don't know. I don't know what a VP of technology would be looking for when they're hiring an engineer. So, but when you get that narrow, you're going to be able to answer those questions of, oh, Mrs. VP of tech really wants ABC to hire. So what can I do to show that I am ABC and how can I get them into my door and have that conversation? And so by customer journey, what I mean is they go from unaware to aware that you exist. And now they consider you and what's going to get them to the hook of a contract. And then what will you do after the contract to nurture that and to increase the lifetime value of that contract? So niche who you're trying to go after, who you really want to go after, and the kinds of projects you really want to go after. And then your marketing efforts revolve around that. And so when you use something like Elise Benen's simplest marketing plan, which I think you would really like because of your engineering brain,
Mhm.
now you're so focused on how to attract that kind of decision maker. And your efforts then will be higher quality leads coming in, higher quality conversations and prospecting happening, and higher level content going out into whatever space of web or social or whatever the things are. And networking, you'll be able to really say yes or no to the right events, right? Especially as a family guy, right? You don't want to waste time on things that don't return. So it might mean that VP of technologies are not going to local chamber events. What they're going to are big conferences of all the VPs of technology in Pittsburgh. And so, would it make more sense to skip these things and invest and go to these other things? And then you have that language to hook them.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on all
Yeah.
of that?
That all sounds really good. I definitely the question that comes to mind is I've spent a little bit of time, a lot of the projects I'm on are kind of a if you build it, they will come. It's a product-based need that people know that they have, and then, I'm brought in to, power that software or, convert that, communicate the value and convert whatever their call to action is. So I've thought about my abstract penguin in those terms. I have not thought a lot about the first step you mentioned of that general awareness, that first introduction. Um, so what is the state of the art for how do you get them to your site in the first place? How do you get that first touch point? Because I'm just much more in the dark on that than I am on refining my messaging, targeting my specific desired prospect and things like that.
I think it's going to be a lot of relationship building, and building relationships take time.
Yeah.
Right. And so one of the things that I've done in the last year is invest in LinkedIn Sales Navigator, because I can build query lists of those specific job titles like we talked about for you. And I'm sure there's a variety of those titles, but you can find who are those people. And I've been working with a gentleman named Mike Vickers of Becoming Preferred. He's a sales coach, and he talks about building that list in Sales Navigator, making connections, and not doing an ask, but giving. So saying, "Hey, I have connections. I like to share them with you." If it's just building a conversation, and it takes time because nobody wants to just get on the phone and say, "Yeah, I'll invest in a." I have no idea what your price point is. I'll invest in a $50,000 job this year with you after our Facebook or our LinkedIn connection. It doesn't work that way, especially as an independent person. So so I have lots of thoughts. It's LinkedIn Sales Navigator to help you find the people you want to get in front of. And then that's content publishing within LinkedIn so they see that you are actually doing what you say you're doing. And then the analogy of that all is dating, right? Like you're not gonna marry on the first date, right? You have the first date and see if you're cool or not, and see if you want to spend time or have more conversations. I mean, it takes time. And so the more they see you, the more you build that authority. So it's a multiple touch point. It's LinkedIn connections, it's going to the right networking events, it's putting out content that attracts those same people. Right. And I think that's where you could probably rest, right? Because you don't need to do a big ad buy, or you talked earlier about video and all those things. Like, I don't think you need any of that. I think you just need to you focus on lead generation, and that means building the right list of people to get in front of. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Um, can you talk more about that? Because I think part of it is just, one of my biggest gripes is I go to a website and here's a pop-up for sign up for our newsletter. And I'm like, I haven't even looked at your products yet. You haven't communicated your value and you're asking me to sign up for your newsletter. Get rid of that pop-up. I do a lot of user experience empathy. Like I don't want to waste people's time. So I think part of that is a superpower, but part of that gives me a fear of, well, I don't want to cold call people. I don't want to bother them with, um, how would you suggest me overcoming that to find these people and reach out to them? You mentioned like, be giving and having that generosity mindset. Talk a little bit more, just very practically, what that looks like.
I think you have the same syndrome that I've seen in many creative solo business owners of you're afraid of the S word, and it's sales. Right? And because we get an icky feeling when we hear the word sales. So you have to shift your mindset of what sales means. Sales for you and I mean going after who you want to work with. And it doesn't mean knocking on their door and saying, "Hire me," right? It's a soft engagement to say, "Hey, I really admire the work that you're doing. I really loved the website and the XYZ of your website. And I had some thoughts. Did you ever think about one, two, three of a thing? Or this reminded me of another project or a project I worked on. If you want to check out that site." That shows that you took the time to really check them out,
Yeah.
right? And so some people get nervous in that, well, I don't want to give free advice. Well, you're not giving free advice to the world. You're giving free advice to someone you really want to work with, and you're trying to nurture it. Does that help? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So I say you test it. If you have not done any marketing or sales and before, and you've only really worked on referral, right? I think you try to really lean into who that decision maker is. Where do they go to find people like you? And even if it's not people like you, resources and professional development or, anything to help their role and their position, how can you get into that space as a thought leader even and build authority so that when you do go knock on their door, whether it's a LinkedIn outreach or you find them at a show or whatever it is, you're already prefacing that you're something worth talking to.
Yeah.
And you said earlier about video and content and all that things and how you're like, yeah, I can do those things and connect them to people. And I think it's very interesting that we state that there's a big difference between brand awareness and lead gen. And brand awareness is something that is a long-term, ongoing, consistent charge, where lead gen can have what I call campaign burst, right? Unless you want just slow and steady lead gen, right? But as a single person, you can only handle so much and you want the best quality leads. And so your burst will be that highly niche targeting and going where they are. And so my analogy of all that, and I love analogies,
Mhm.
is fishing, right? So you've identified the fish that you want to catch. Now your charge is to go and find what ponds they frequent in. We live on Presque Isle, so if we want to catch, I am going to get this wrong, but you'll go get with me, but here. But if you wanted to catch walleye, you know that it's not in the center of the bay, it's over by Walnut Creek Access or whatever, right? Like, and
I
so
think
you're
that's
going to go
true.
to Okay, cool. You're going to go to Walnut Creek Access because that's where the walleye are. And you know now, or you have a good idea of what kind of bait they like to grab onto, right? Because you can't just put bread in like I would do on a golf course and hope something catches. But you put the right bait to the right fish in the right pond. So you've identified your fish or the VPs of tech or whatever, however you want to generalize that. So what ponds are they going to? And I would go there first. I would identify who, go to the ponds, and then you start testing what's the lure, what's the bait to get them on the hook. And you talked about a CRM. I don't think a small business like you and I needs a robust CRM, even if you just use an email program or a spreadsheet to just keep track of who is in that pipeline or who did you reach out to, who needs a follow-up, who was really cool and booked at a call. Just a spreadsheet, right? Of keeping
Yeah.
track of those because persistence is key. They're not going to date you on the first ask. It might take a little bit. And so that's your sales side. Well, then you use something like LinkedIn because they're not going to your .com because they don't know about you yet. If you're in your LinkedIn, now you're using that as your thought leadership platform to show what you know and to show what makes you different from the other ones.
Cool. How, yeah, I like that a lot. What would agency Jen, if you're working with a client, on the marketing side of things, and they say, "Oh yeah, well we need to build out a website. We need a digital presence, with maybe some specific custom software." How are you going to look for someone like me to build that? What watering holes or where would you go to start that search to find engineering and stuff? Because you don't want to be in WordPress anymore. Like, so you'd like someone like me to come along and build out that stuff
Yeah.
for you or for your client. How could I
So
do that?
yeah, so I use a lot of vendors, partners, to get me out of the weeds, right? Because I can touch enough, but I don't want to touch them anymore. So I utilize my accountability and networking groups of people like me. And so I would go into that space. So the Creatives Roundtable or the digital marketing agency or You Gurus, but You Gurus there anymore, but these groups that are all like-minded people, and I would go out to there and say, here's the project that I'm working on, and I need someone to do this part. Who do you recommend? And I would get that. So it's referral, right? If you came at me before I needed it, for my particular agency, you might just be cold to me because it's not something I'm selling. Because that's not my niche, right? Of selling software-ish stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so being though where I'm looking for resources to help make my business even better. So that's that pond. So that's the Creatives Roundtable. That's any digital marketing agency cohorts. Um, I can send you some links of some current ones that are active. Way back in the early 2000s, that would have been like How Design Live. And they had a whole UX track of experts that would go. I'm not sure if that's active anymore, but we could see there was Revolve, there was the Adobe Y conference. Like there's all kinds of arenas in which agency owners would need you, right? So to find that fishing hole. But what I can tell you on another side of that for a web developer, and when you said WordPress, which I love WordPress, but it gives me the heebie-jeebies to think about being in there every day, is I look for a developer that can handle growth. So right now, like I have a handful of clients with a Cleveland vendor, but then they get kind of stuck because they're overloaded. And then what happens is the client that just built a website and is hosting and something happens to their website, they want immediate response.
Mm.
Well, if this team is now too inundated with other projects and can't respond, that leaves a poor taste in the client's mouth, which then reflects on me. Well, you said that that vendor was good and was going to take care of the site. So I look at sustainability and growth and being able to have this long-term relationship with the client after the site's made. So that's what I look for, and that's really hard to find because it just seems really hard for people to know what their growth model is going to be.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah, that definitely helps a lot, and I think, similar to your branding with the two halves of the creative brain, that speaks exactly to why I have an ampersand in my logo. The ampersand penguin is I enjoy design and development, so I think, I hit my stride in my career at the perfect time when the iPhone was introduced, because all of these graphic designers that were used to 8.5 by 11 or 11 by 17 print design now need to make things squash and stretch to an iPhone size and an iPad size and a desktop size. And that was fantastic for me because it's like, yes, I've got the engineering mindset, but I can speak designer and I can speak creative and be like, okay, well, if we rearrange this, then in the code, I can move it around here, and I need to separate stuff, out from your design. Building design systems out of branding and mockups and stuff is something that I really like to do. So I think it would make a lot of sense for me to kind of be at those watering holes and saying, yeah, if you're a designer and you need development help, that might be just talking with you now. That might be another job title or area
yeah,
for me to
another
really focus
vertical.
on.
And I would even go take that a step further if you say agency owners or account rep or however you want to bucket that one. But instead of saying development needs, give them specific examples. Like client had X challenge and I helped them come up with a solution because when I work with a developer to build big websites, I'm not sitting there saying, hey, we need this is going to sound loose, but we need gravity forms and SendGrid and da 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 da. Like, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is talking to a client about what their strategy is and what their digital marketing strategy is going to be and how their CRM is. And then it's like, oh, yeah, so we got to make sure you have forms and forms that connect. This, again, this is a very naive example, but work with me. Yeah, you need forms to connect to your CRM, and then we need the CRM to do blah, 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 blah stuff. So then it's, hey, developer, so we need forms and forms that connect to the CRM, right? Versus developer trying to extract out the needs from the client. I come in as the liaison. So I guess let me give a more clear example because that was kind of lame. When I was in a hospitality company, we rebuilt two of their massive resort websites, and they were both very outdated. They also needed they had severe issues of accessibility because those lawsuits were coming higher and higher to the
Mm.
table. Um, and so when you think about accessibility issues, functionality issues, all the people that touch the website from the inside, all the different tools that it needs to work with, like I sit here and think about ownership, and they're like, I don't even know what the heck you're talking about. Right. And if I think about this ownership talking to web developer, there's going to be a huge bridge to define and cross as to what all these things are. And so that's where I excel as being the liaison between ownership or client, like whoever's like the main person, to developer and say, okay, Andrew, we have this accessibility stuff. We need seasonality stuff. We need to be able to look at summer events and winter events at the same time, which wasn't a thing before. And we have a lot of different hands, a lot of different sub brands within this entity that need to touch the website to put in their events or content changes or whatever. And we have a ticketing system and we have a reservation system and we have this thing. Like I'm laying the groundwork out and then saying at the end of the day, this is what I need it to do. That's where there's a great marriage then between me and developer. And so these two resort sites we did simultaneously and we got them done in 6 months. And when I talked with the developer after, he's like, Jen, those should have taken a year each. But because I project managed and was the account rep and the liaison and the translator, we were able to expedite that and get them both done at the same time and in 6 months, which was huge. So
Yeah.
so when I'm sharing that, so then you can hear from an agency side, how are ways that you can connect so it grabs my attention? Because if you just said to me, I'm not saying you said this, WordPress and engineer, I'm like, okay, and I don't know what. Like, give me actual results so I can connect it to the kind of clients that I have. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
definitely. Yeah, and
It's that
that's,
bait again.
yeah. And that's kind of that systems mindset where I have lots of opinions in project management software and how to track that and manage that. And that kind of, I think of it as like engineering systems, but yeah, just kind of that making deliverables and getting it on time. I still have a certificate. Uh, I was a full-time employee years ago, and they would give everyone a different certificate at the end of the year, and mine was the on time and under budget award because I did a project on time and under budget, and that was very atypical for them. So, tying to that kind of um, results and yeah, it's yeah, that's really cool. I like the that kind of thinking and just from an engineer, if you're talking descriptively and not prescriptively. Engineers love that. We don't want you to say, "Oh, you need gravity forms." We want you to say, "We need to input this data and in this certain way." We're like,
Right.
"Yes, we will prescribe the solution you need. I need you to describe the need, and we will prescribe the
Correct.
code." So,
Yes, exactly. And that's that language flip, right? That you can do to VP of Technology or agency lead or whomever the vertical is. And this all goes back to the thing that I say endlessly through these talks, through my one-on-ones, through workshops, whatever, of it's the right message to the right people in the right places. This is the exact case of that, right? So your right
yeah.
people, VP of technology, the right language, speaking their speak of whatever thing that they're trying to solve, and being in the right places. And that's finding those ponds or watering holes, like you said, to be able to do that. And that will create increased growth of your database, more conversations, and better quality leads.
What kind of what needs are you seeing? Because I can say, oh, save time, be on budget, generate more leads, generate more interaction, meet accessibility standards. There's a lot of like requirements that I can think of, but make your business grow is a very generic lead. Do you have a
Mhm.
specific felt need that you're seeing that you could recommend speaking to? Or I guess that's just being part of the watering hole and hearing what people are
Mhm.
saying.
Um, Currently, what there's a project that I'm in the beginning stages of working with, and that it's a new uh, venture that has multiple different locations. They all have different branding. That's not the issue, but they all have different site structures. And so right now we're just entering the stages of what is the brand strategy and goal here? What do we want to have happen? If we acquire another business, do we want to rinse and repeat a structure we've already built? Or does everybody need to be authentic? Right. So we're going through the why right now so that we can get to the how. And what I would love to see come through is everybody gets the same site, only it's unique to them. And so what does each site need? Right. And then decide dissecting that, but then creating a churn and burn process so that it's we put the heavy lift at the front so that we can repurpose with each new acquisition, if that makes sense. Functionality wise, though, the last few years I've really focused on nonprofits, and that is there's not a whole lot of need for that other than we need a quick button to go to a donation tool. And it's okay, well, what donation tool are you going to use? Well, I don't know yet. Okay, well, when you figure it out, we'll put the button there. Like they're quick
Yeah.
fixes, right? So um the
So you
nonprofit
so
zone, it's harder.
yeah. So you would say like scalability, growth, reproducibility, formalization of systems, those are all kind of needs that I could
From
speak
for my
to.
seat, yep, for my seat for sure. But if I were going where I would hand you off to client to do for that long-term engagement, to keep the site active once it's up, is making sure the back end is very user-friendly to the novice user. And so that they can go in and quickly change a content or a picture without screwing up a bunch of stuff. Um, and event calendars. Actually, event calendars, I don't know if this is what you mean, but event calendars have been very, very popular lately across a lot of my different clients, in that it's easy to input and easy to share to social media so that they can capture registrations, whether free or paid. And I'm sure, I know there's a ton of tools out there, but then it's like, well, which tool is the right one to use?
Yep.
So that's that
Yeah.
prescription
Yeah.
diagnosis thing.
Yeah. A lot of my work is like, oh yeah, well we've got this RSVP system, but it's off the shelf software as a solution, but we need to ask for dietary restrictions. And I'm like, well, your off
Mhm.
the shelf solution doesn't let you do custom fields. Now you're in my ballpark where yeah, I can, you know, add in those custom fields and then tie it to your existing systems and all of that.
Yeah,
Um,
versus changing the whole plugin or whatever.
yeah. Yeah.
I know that was
Cool.
probably a really lame example, but that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, this all sounds really good. This has been helpful to just kind of clarify some of the thoughts that have been swirling in my head.
And I know we've talked along over the years a handful of different times, and I think that after this conversation, it's really picking the kind of fish that you want to attract and then speaking their speak. And I think that will turn the result into great catches.
Excellent, definitely.
Awesome. Well, we have a couple minutes left. Is there anything else you'd like to ask me?
This has given me a lot to think about. I think this has been really good. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm sure we'll speak again and keep in
Yeah,
touch and keep going. But
yeah,
yeah,
for
this has been
sure.
helpful.
Awesome, Andrew. Well, thanks so much for coming to marketing office hours, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
My pleasure. Have a good one.
All right, you too. Bye.